welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Pooja and I make a bunch of different chatty videos, and I love talking about ways that you can live life to the fullest by doing a few simple tricks. So this is going to be one of those videos today, and I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite things that I've ever done in my entire life, and it is picking up journaling as a habit. I believe that this is a habit that everyone can benefit from, and it can be done in so many different ways. So I just want to talk about it a little bit today. But first, I think it's necessary to give a little bit of context as to why I journal and why I find it so useful in my life, and how you can benefit from it as well. So I actually had a diary for many years. So I started when I was in elementary school, and when I used to journal, it was primarily drawing and basically storytelling through that. I would create a bunch of different graphics, and whether it's stories that surrounded my own life as it was, or stories that I basically made up because I had a wild imagination back then, and that still continues to this day. I journal primarily in that fashion until middle school, where then I use my diary to write down what happened that day, get rid of any bad emotions, and basically use it as a personal friend that I could carry wherever I wanted and no one could read it. Then eventually in college, I picked it back up as a habit after many years, and I basically use it as a way to document my life as it was happening. So that's a little bit of context for me, why I journaled. Journaling exists in many different ways and forms. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about it as a way to take care of yourself and discover who you are a little bit more. I'm specifically going to be talking about it in a very broad perspective. I believe that this type of journaling is very customizable to who you are and what you want to get out of it. Yeah, so now you're probably wondering, how on earth do I start journaling? Like, what journal should I get? There are a bunch of considerations that you should have in mind when selecting a format. So first, do you want it to be digital or do you want it to be physical? For digital, you can open up a Word, Pages, or Google Docs document and basically type up your entries online and on your computer and then save them, especially on Google Drive. Your documents will always be available on the cloud unless your storage runs out. So that is a really good option. But yes, this is great for people who want to continuously access their journal entries on their computer, because in that case, there is no question to where they'll be stored. You most likely can always find them on your computer. And there are also a bunch of different apps that do the same thing, but they're more tailored to your mood and more interactive in that sense. So there is an app called Dailyo that I tried for a bit, which is basically an interactive journal that also helps you track your mood. It was a good app, but personally not for me. I prefer to journal by hand, and I'll get more into that next. As for the physical journal formats, I think a notebook is the best way to do it. Obviously, you can write your journal entries on separate sheets of paper, but I think it's better to just have it all in one place. And this is the journal that I have. It is the Moleskine Classic Collection large notebook size, and I don't know if they have this color still, but I'll link this in the description below. It is really good, and it has ruled pages, which I personally really like, but you can get it in 4 different page options. So ruled, like I said, there are plain pages, there are gridded pages, and there are dotted pages. First consideration that I would consider in selecting a notebook is whether it's hardcover or softcover. I personally prefer hardcover just because it gives me the flexibility to write wherever I please, and I don't feel limited to writing on a desk or a table. The hardcover gives me a solid surface to write on wherever I am, basically. Softcover is also an excellent option, but I feel like my pages are more protected with a hardcover as well. That's why I selected this. And the next consideration to have is, like I'd mentioned before, the different types of pages in your journal. So for example, for me, I prefer a ruled page, and I feel like this is not very common. At least when I watch videos about journaling, I don't really see people who are such fans of ruled pages, but for me, I do. And the reason why is because it already gives me a structure to write out my entries, and I don't really do anything super crazy with my entries. I usually just write what I'm doing that day, like my deepest thoughts and emotions, or whatever I feel like writing. I feel like the rule page gives me a nice layout that I feel like I'm using enough page space, because I tend to write pretty large unless I have ruled lines guiding me there. For me, it's a personally great option, but you might find that dotted pages might work better for you. For example, if you like to doodle more in your entries and you want to give more flair to that, plain pages are also a good option if you don't want to feel limited by the ruled pages. And gridded, I don't see a lot of people using gridded pages. I feel like that's often if you're making a lot of charts and things like that. So now you got your journal. How can you start journaling consistently? I feel like this is often hard for people to do. I told this to myself too. I was like, why would I journal? Because it's literally so time consuming, and how can I even get started? Like, I just don't have enough time to even incorporate this into my routine. And what I'd say to that is to take the pressure off of it. And you're probably wondering, like,
yo, that's like literally so counterintuitive. Like, why would I even do that?
The reason why I'm saying to take the pressure off is because the more and more you treat journaling like it's a chore and something that you feel forced to do, you'll eventually fall out of that habit. If I feel forced to do something and trapped in a routine, eventually I'll lose that habit, because again, naturally, being the Sagittarius I am, I hate feeling trapped. And rather, journaling should be treated like a form of self-care, which it is. It should be treated like a spa, because girl, it is. It's a spa for your mind, okay? What I will say, if you don't want to journal every day and you feel like that's too intimidating at first, journal once a week or journal twice a week in the beginning if that is the most comfortable for you. But don't feel pressured to do it every day, because again, you will lose that habit quickly. I actually have had this notebook that I just showed you. I've had it for 3 years. My friend actually gave it to me as a gift. I journaled sporadically here and there for like basically the past 2 years after that. And now I'm back in the pandemic writing every single day. It basically shows that if you take the pressure off of it, you'll eventually start doing it as a mechanism to take care of yourself. Another great way to learn more about yourself and reflect on your life is by using prompts. The primary way I use journaling is to dump my feelings onto the page, but occasionally I will challenge myself and use a prompt, and these are great. And especially if you're someone who doesn't feel the urge so often to dump your feelings onto the page, this is a great way to just learn more about yourself, and I highly encourage everyone to do this. There are a ton of prompts that you can find online for free. Sometimes I'll create my own prompts. They are great resources to reflect on your life. One YouTuber that I really like for prompts is Lavender. She makes some really great prompts, but again, you can Google for journaling prompts for any type of journaling that you want, for self-care, for gratitude, for self-discovery. There are a ton of prompts that exist online for free, so you can just Google them online and find a bunch that will suit your journaling needs. Another tip that I will give you is to be as messy as you want with it. I feel like sometimes I often have this feeling like some of the emotions that I put in my journal, they're a little bit hard to look back on, because it just reveals a lot of what I had felt in the past that I just don't agree with. And even in middle school, I read my journal back and I was like, yo, this is like, I was so petty back then, like, ugh. But again, I would encourage you to be as messy as you want, especially if you are the type of person that uses it for self-care. It is the place for you to just be as honest as you want, because this will not be seen by anyone else but you. So take advantage of that. I'm personally the type of person who has a bunch of deep thoughts that sometimes I share with my friends afterwards, but I feel like they need a place to live right away, because if I don't kind of take care of them and address them before I go to sleep, I'll spend all night thinking about them, whether those thoughts are positive or negative. This is a perfect resource for me to just like brain dump everything and make myself feel like I'm heard in a way, even though obviously this is not seen by anyone else but myself. Life is so imperfect, and that's what's so beautiful about it. And that's what my journal here is for, to remind myself that life has its imperfections and I also have my imperfections. It's important to treat those imperfections as valued pieces of my daily life. That's why I would highly encourage you to be as messy as you please. Lastly, I just want to leave you with some other noteworthy tips that you can consider when starting to journal. So the first thing that I would say is to date everything. I personally am a very nostalgic person. I like to look back on my journal entries and just reminisce about the past. I wouldn't have been able to do that unless I dated everything. Whether you're nostalgic or not, I think it's helpful to just have a record of how you're feeling. I personally get sleep paralysis every once in a while, so I like to document that, and I like to just have a record in general of when I'm getting it in a very natural and organic way. Dating everything is a good step. Another consideration to have is pens. We need to talk about pens because I don't think they're talked about nearly enough as they should be. Pens make or break the journaling experience, period. I personally can only write with gel pens because if the ink is not smooth, the writing experience just isn't fun for me, and I love seeing a good pen ink on my page. And obviously there are tons of pens that exist. My favorite right now is actually the Pentel Energel 0.5 needle tip pen. I'll link it in the description. That is my favorite. It has really fast drying ink, so if you are a left-handed person, this would be great for you because the ink dries super fast. And I'm not a lefty myself, but you know, that's always a good thing to have. I like the Muji 0.5 pens as well. Those are the two pens that I prefer for journaling. The next thing I will say is to find a good spot to journal. Personally, I like to be alone. I don't like to be disturbed when I journal. Outside interference tends to affect my mood and affect how I perceive everything. So I like to have a nice quiet spot where I'm left to write in peace, you know, not be disturbed as much, and obviously a comfortable chair. I usually like to write on a desk. If I really need to journal that day and I don't have a desk with me, like I said, my journal allows me the flexibility to journal wherever I want. Honestly, I just like will put my knees up and sit and journal. Some people like to set the mood for journaling, so like lighting a candle and making it a nice experience for you. I do it so often that sitting in a quiet place with good light is enough for me, but find a place that makes you excited to journal and doesn't take away from your experience. Okay, so those were all my tips and tricks for getting started to journal for self-care and self-discovery. I really hope this was helpful. Again, this is something that I believe everyone can benefit from. I hope that you enjoyed these tips and that you'll incorporate it in your daily life, and let me know if you like these types of videos because honestly, I really enjoy making them. I love sharing things that I'm excited about with you guys. Stay safe, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!